Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. This week's episode is a first for us, and in lieu of our normal format of Kentucky political news, a fascinating guest, and a critical call to action on a Kentucky political issue, we are thrilled to be bringing you a Democratic primary forum for Kentucky's 6th Congressional District. We're so glad we have 4 candidates tonight seeking to take on Andy Barr in the November general election. We're glad they've made themselves available to join us just 3 weeks ahead of the May 21st primary election. If you're unfamiliar with Progress Kentucky, we are an all-volunteer group of Central Kentucky activists committed to informing and engaging voters throughout the bluegrass to turn our Commonwealth purple. Why purple, you ask? Because, well, between red and blue is purple. And since our show is called Kernels of Truth, we thought it best to set realistic expectations for our efforts. I'm Aaron. I'm the chair of Progress Kentucky. Tonight, I'm joined by my fellow Progress Kentucky board members and Kernels of Truth co-hosts. Let's go ahead and check in on them now. Kimberly, you there?
Yep, I'm here. What would a kernel of truth show be without me forgetting about my mute button?
Yeah, right? No, it would not be a Kernels of Truth show, clearly. Kimberly, you are coming to us from where?
I am coming to you live from Louisville, Kentucky, Jefferson County, the largest county in the Commonwealth. And I'm also here still at work because our regional vice president is coming in tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Why would they come in to the Louisville store on Derby week? Like you got nothing better to do?
Apparently, they say they don't really know a lot about Derby, but they come from the Atlanta area. So I'm sure that they're just saying that. Maybe they're coming.
Just a random coincidence. We got to be in Louisville the Derby week. Anyway.
Right.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Really excited to have you on to co-moderate with us. Unfortunately, Chris Priest's video is frozen, so I guess we're not going to be able to hear from him.
No! Oh, no!
Amazing.
Oh, he scared me.
How are you?
I'm good, and I'm happy to be able to be my silly self because I'm not running for U.S. Congress.
Chris, where are you?
I am in the lovely little town of Berea, Kentucky, home to the pinnacles and all sorts of little crafty things.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, this is exciting because, I think the 6th Congressional District, I think, is important to a lot of us for a lot of different reasons. Kimberly, I know, you've got, even as somebody who's not a voter within the 6th District, you have some ties to that. I personally moved to Kentucky in 2018, right after the primary, actually. So I believe in 2018, one of the most competitive, races for the 6th district. That was, of course, Amy McGrath's year. And she kind of came on the scene with quite a launch video, really proven to be an incredibly effective fundraiser and ran an impressive campaign. And in fact, that's how, if you haven't watched Kernels of Truth and haven't talked about it before, that's how I got into Kentucky politics. I actually worked for Amy's grassroots field effort and helped run a couple of her grassroots campaign offices where she had one in every single county in the district. It was 20 counties at that time. They've since redistricted a bit, but yeah, 20 offices. And it was a great way to get to know a really important area for sure. Kimberly, were you involved with that campaign at all? Or I know you've been involved with, Amy and have worked with her in a bit.
Yes, I know Amy very, very well. And yes, I did have some part to play. Not as big as yours, actually, but I know Amy very well.
I still have the calluses on my my knuckles from all the doors that I knocked, I think.
Andy Bashir's campaign the first time was one of the most aggressive campaigns known to the political world nationally.
Oh, yeah. Huge field effort for sure. And Chris, tell us a little bit about your connection to the 6th District in addition to voting there.
Well, last cycle I ran for it and lost in the primary, but it was I'd worked up to that since like right after the previous election. That January, I really decided that I was going to run, and then spent all year really learning how to run and doing it, and it was quite an experience.
Yeah, great way to get to know an important part of our state for sure. Well, we're really thrilled to be talking to a great collection of candidates. It's the most candidates I think I've ever seen in this race. I think the first time that I got involved with it, as I said, Amy had just won the primary. It was against what?
There were more candidates when
Reggie.
I first ran.
Reggie Thomas was running for it. The former mayor, right?
Jim Gray,
Jim Gray was running.
At least 2 other people.
Yeah. So, this is maybe the kind of traditional level of engagement. I don't know. We've had a couple of kind of quieter years, but really excited to hear what these folks have to say. We got a lineup of questions just so folks know how we are going to go through this. Each of us are going to ask questions. Each candidate will have a chance to answer those questions. We will call on them. There's not going to be a lot of back. It's not a debate. It's kind of a forum. We want to hear them all answer and respond to kind of some issues of the day, and allow them to kind of share their views on issues that they would be confronted with if they are able to get to DC or get on into the general election. So let's get into that. I think what we're going to do is actually share the bios of these different candidates, and we'll bring them on the screen too. So, Chris, you want to get started?
Yeah. So our first candidate is Randy Cravens, is a Kentucky native and has been a resident of the 6th Congressional District for most of his adult life. He was born in Paducah, Kentucky, and now lives in Richmond with his wife, Sarah, and son and 2 daughters, where he works as a major incident manager in the technology space. This is Randy's second campaign following a write-in campaign in 2022 for the same office, in which he earned close to 9,000 votes, one of the largest vote totals by a write-in candidate in modern Kentucky history. And you can check out his website at randycravens.com. Kimberly?
Yes, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Todd Kelly, who is from Lexington and married to Cynthia Ryan, an artist. The couple have 2 adult children, a nurse in Philadelphia, and a guitarist and singer with the Slaps. Okay. Mr. Kelly has founded and owned wholesale nurseries for 35 years, and he is a former co clerk of Lexington Friends Meetings, Quakers. Mr. Kelly's interests include the history of money and debt and the workings of both the U.S. monetary system and the Federal Reserve accounting. He has a years-long record of authoring Herald Leader op-eds on these and other issues. So you can find out more information about him on Kelly in Congress 2024.com.
Now introducing Jonathan Richardson of Lexington, draws inspiration from his upbringing in Maddoxtown 1 of Lexington's Black Hamlets established after slavery. As the founder of the Unity in the Community Incorporated, Jonathan works to empower marginalized voices and foster youth development, shaping a more inclusive society. His advocacy extends to education reform alongside initiatives for accessible housing, healthcare, and cannabis legislation, rooted in the conviction that every American deserves life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Jonathan vows to confront entrenched privilege in Congress and amplify the struggles of everyday citizens. He intends to chart a new course with unwavering dedication to progress.
Kimberly, you're muted.
I was doing so good. Okay. You all just don't know, but this happens every single week with my forget to unmute myself. So I'd like to introduce to you Miss Shauna Rudd, who is a licensed clinical social worker. She's dedicated to improving the lives of Kentuckians, as well as she has a bachelor's degree in social work from EKU, that's Eastern Kentucky University, and a master's degree from the University of Kentucky. She has a strong educational background. Shauna's professional experience includes school based social work, case management, and psychotherapy. She has a deep understanding of challenges faced by the underserved populations throughout central Kentucky. Shauna's platform focuses on correcting wealth inequality and bringing prosperity back to Kentucky by divesting from war and investing in our communities. Read more about her campaign at shaunaforcongress.com.
Wonderful. Welcome, all of you. We're now going to start with our round robin questions. We'll ask the same question to each candidate. Each has 1 minute to answer. So we'll start with gun safety. How would you address gun safety? Would you support federal policies focused on decreasing mass shootings and suicides? If so, which policies would you prioritize? And we will start this question on gun safety with Randy.
Well, thanks, Aaron. Regarding gun safety, first of all, we had a huge win for the country when the Biden administration just this week closed the gun show loophole that enabled folks to buy weapons without a background check at gun shows or in unorganized transactions. That was something that I've been calling for a very long time, and that's been done. So that's a huge win. It's going to face some legal battles, but we're hopeful that it'll overcome those challenges. I think we need to continue down that path of regulation. We certainly have a gun culture in the United States and certainly in Kentucky, and there's no one that's going to doubt that. I'm not a person that's going to be out to take someone's guns. I think that's impractical, and especially given the fact that there are sporting uses for long arms and guns of that nature. I do endorse and would submit in Congress legislation to reinstate the assault weapons ban. I think that's a good place to start, to restrict expanded magazines and things of that nature, to at least give folks a chance if they're facing an active shooter situation. Whereas today they're facing weapons of war, they would have an opportunity to at least take cover before being impacted.
Okay, thanks. And Todd, same question.
Yeah, well, thanks. I think I'm for any reasonable gun, and I wouldn't call it regulation. I would call it gun policy. I think we have to recognize there are more guns than people in the United States, and we're really not going to do anything about that. And I also think, I think we have to recognize the people that do own those guns. Any attempt to, overregulate them will cause a backlash, and I think will lead to violence. So I think we should, recognize the fact of how many guns there are, and that's really all I have to say about that.
Okay, thanks. Jonathan, same question.
So as far as gun violence in this country, obviously it's a big problem. It's been a problem for years. I myself have personally lost friends and family and classmates to gun violence. And one example that I see here on a local level in Lexington, we have what's called One Lexington. And not only do they get together with different groups in the community to try to confront the gun violence situations before it happens, but they also act as a mediator because we have a lot of youth that are impacted by gun violence. And a lot of these things, I think, begin at an early age. So we do need tighter gun regulation. However, most of the people that I know that have died from gun violence die from handguns. They haven't died from AR-15 type weapons. So I don't think that we need to actually ban AR-15s, the assault style weapons, but we do need to have tighter gun regulation. And also I think gun violence is tied into mental health in this country. So we need to address the mental health issues in this country, and we also just need to build more unity because we have divisive.
Thank you
We
so
have a
much.
lot of
We do
divisive-
have a 1 minute. I just want to let everyone know we have a 1 minute kind of time limit for you to answer each answer. So if I am rudely interrupting anyone, that is not because I'm rude. It's because some folks are going long, which I understand, but don't hold against me. We won't hold against you, but we will cut you off. So, Shauna, final candidate to answer the question.
Yeah. Hi. I have had a special interest in researching the reasons behind mass shootings, specifically in gun crimes, as a mental health professional for years. And so what I have found is that we don't always utilize research and what the research supports when we implement gun policy. So for example, we always hear a lot about mental health, but then whenever, in 2019, Raghi Girgis and some people at the University of Columbia did a meta-analytical review where they looked at gun crime. It occurred from the early 1900s to the early 2000s. And what they found was that less than 6% of people who committed these crimes met criteria for these diagnoses that we see, that we were claiming in policy that people have. They're obtaining these guns and committing these crimes. That's not what the research supports. Research does support things like 30-day holds. This is evident. So in policy, we really need to look at what research is being done and what is effective versus what we just think will work.
Excellent. Thank you all for your answers, thoughtful answers. And now we'll go to Chris.
All right, the next question. As you all know, I teach public high school. So here's a question on public education. How would you address public schools in the 6th District and around the country? And do you support charter schools? And we will start with Shauna.
No, we do not need charter schools. We do not need school choice vouchers. These would be detrimental for fair, equal, quality education for everyone in America. We have to fund and support our public schools. We need to pay teachers an adequate wage. I mean, just at least match cost of living in their districts. We need smaller classroom sizes. And even beyond like the, K through 12 public education we see. Under education, I would really like to see affordable childcare for working families, for kids under 3. And then also higher education. Higher education is more inaccessible than it's ever been for younger Americans. This is also part of education policy. This is money that exists. This is money that if we were to invest these in our communities, we could make not only K through 12, but again, early childhood education and higher education more affordable. These are all things that we need for a strong population.
All right. Jonathan?
Could I get the question again?
Yes. How would you address public schools in the 6th District and around the country? And do you support charter schools?
So education reform is one of my top pillars on my platform. Here in America, we are falling behind compared to other countries in the world, such as China, especially when it comes to our STEM, so science, technology, engineering, the mathematics fields. And so with the world becoming smaller through globalization, we know that we need to invest in our education, and I'm in favor of public schools. And I don't think that tax dollars should go to charter schools. So as far as the education system, obviously investing in the youth they're the future of this country. So we just need to invest more into our education system and realize that the future generation is supported mostly through our public school systems.
Okay. Todd?
The charter schools, no, absolutely not. Public funds should be used solely for public education, not in any way for private education. And if you believe in an informed electorate, if you believe in the notion of public good, public welfare, you should believe in public education. It's the role of Congress to provide for the general welfare. And I think it's the role of Congress to provide for universal education. It shouldn't be left up to a tax base, however rich or however poor, to fund education. That just leaves too many questions, that leaves too many people behind, and it gives too many people an unfair leg up.
Randy?
Well, to answer the charter schools question, absolutely not. There should be no support for charter schools funding from federal or state dollars. To the second point, how would I address the schools in Kentucky? In Kentucky, we're facing an issue much like folks in Oklahoma or Texas are facing in that we're dealing with a rampant politicization of our school systems. And that's causing inequality in teacher pay. When you have funding that is blocked by the state legislature to get back at a governor who is of a different party, as we're facing here in Kentucky, it results in nothing but the decline of the educational quality and the quality of teachers and teacher morale in each of those districts. I think we need to federalize education spending, move it away from the state level to the federal level, at least for teacher pay, so that can be done by direct disbursement from the Department of Education. And I think we need to look very closely at rehashing quite a bit of what we do with our public schools, including closer partnerships through the Department of Agriculture for our school meal programs to expand those and to ensure free meals for all children.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Aaron, the next question.
Actually, it's me. And
Oh,
it's
I'm
about, that's okay. It's about reproductive justice, okay? Despite voters soundly rejecting Amendment 2 and supporting the state constitutional protections for abortion in 2022, and abortion being a central issue in last year's governor's race, with voters rallying behind the pro-choice Andy Barr, abortion largely remains inaccessible in Kentucky. So this is my question to you. How would you approach abortion and reproductive health care if you were elected? And also, would you vote to codify Roe versus Wade and support a federal abortion access law? Jonathan.
Thanks. So I say that this is probably one of the toughest questions that we all face, especially since Roe versus Wade was overturned. And now that we see that abortion rights are pretty much in the hands of each individual state. And I've actually been doing a lot of research into this issue. And I do believe that as Americans, we do have that, we should have the right and the freedom to choose what we do with our bodies. And I know that with the law being overturned, obviously it's up to the states. And so I would first be one to offer legislation and get it voted on through committee. But as far as I think that abortion, to be honest, is one of the most divisive and polarizing things in politics currently. And so we have to realize that all laws begin as ideas. And so first, I'd be willing to sponsor a bill, and then after that, have it go to committee to be voted on. But the simple thing is that not one person can get this overturned. We need to have a majority on this. We have to have the 2/3 vote on it. And obviously we have a majority Republican based in.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Randy.
Well, I think first we do need to codify Roe v. Wade into federal law. I think that's plain and simple the best way forward as far as addressing the abortion issue right now. It's creeping into IVF. IVF should be federally codified as well, with protections and protections for healthcare workers that perform those procedures. I think that's a no-brainer, and I think it's something we could get taken care of right out of the gate. But the most important thing that we could do, whoever the candidate is for this race, is to get out in the field and support every single state candidate on the Democratic side that's running for office, especially in the 6th district. We've got to break the supermajority, because not everything can go back to the federal government, though it should in this case. Anything that we can get done on the state level, supported by at least a non-supermajority legislature, is going to be a lot more durable and a lot more long-lasting for our friends and loved ones that are facing these unimaginable choices. and these horrible situations where they're caught in a terrible situation outside of a hospital. So that's what I would do to pursue this.
Thank you, Todd.
Yeah, I don't think codifying Roe versus Wade at the federal level is possible. I think that's a fantasy under the current composition of Congress. So this is a state issue. It's increasingly a state issue. This kind of represents abortion access as a social hierarchy that everybody's living under increasingly. After Rand was born, Cynthia became pregnant. Our baby, Mary Mildred, was diagnosed in the womb with trisomy 13, which is an extra copy of the 13th chromosome, which means a life expectancy of weeks to months if she were to come to term. Cynthia decided to terminate her pregnancy. We did that at Central Baptist Hospital. It was the right thing to do. It was a merciful thing to do. Our daughter, if she were here in Kentucky today, if she made that same decision, she would be prosecuted in jail. I think this is outrageous, and I'll do everything I can to change it.
Shauna.
I agree with Todd that it feels pretty bleak to see Roe codified on the federal level, and I also agree with Randy that we really need to work hard to see this in the state level. In the meantime, I believe that Hadley's Law in Kentucky has not even been assigned to a committee yet. Meanwhile, women and girls are in danger, and they don't receive access to life-saving health care. But, this is we are running for a federal election, and it is imperative that we fight to reinstate Roe v. Wade. I mean, this was something that was difficult at the time, but it is a constitutional right to body autonomy and healthcare choices. It's terrifying to be a woman who could be pregnant, who doesn't have autonomy over her own body, over her family planning. We have a gaggle of older white men, and no offense to older white men personally, but we have a host of them who are looking at women and saying, you don't get a say in this conversation. And it really needs to come from a federal level, because this is a constitutional protection that is not being honored.
Great. Thank you all. For the next question, we're going to talk about clean energy. So the Biden administration passed the largest federal clean energy investments in history, some of which have directly supported Kentucky's economy as we've become the leading EV battery manufacturing state in the nation. Do you support these investments? And how would you approach clean energy and climate change if elected? And we'll go ahead and start with Shauna.
No, it's my understanding that even with electric vehicles, the lithium in the batteries is so damaging to the climate. We really need to shift our focus away from fossil fuels and just vehicles in general. We are a car-dependent nation, and it is very profitable for those in power to keep us as a car-dependent nation without strong public transportation, with little to no investment in passenger rail. I mean, climate change is an existential crisis, and we saw right here in Kentucky what happened when we refused to maneuver away from coal. We now, we held on to that too long. We now have communities where coal mining hasn't happened in 15 years, and they're still drinking contaminated water. We have to make the move to clean energy. We have to look beyond cars and electric vehicles and lithium batteries. We have to look at things that are actually sustainable, whether or not they're profitable.
Great. So, hey, quick moderator's privilege here. I'm going to go ahead and fact check the lithium comment. While it definitely does take energy to mine lithium, the overall life cycle analysis of EVs is that they are far less carbon intense than internal combustion engines, and can become cleaner over the life of the vehicle. So just going to say that one right now. There's a lot of misinformation out there about EVs right now. And I think while I don't, I won't comment on other people's unless you put something out there that's not actually accurate. Sorry, Shauna.
No, I appreciate it. Can I just say I wasn't saying that electric cars are worse than cars, but just in comparison to things like public transportation and just getting vehicles off the road.
Get everyone onto bikes is what I say.
Love a bike. Love a bike.
That said, I live in Lexington. I live in Childsburg. I don't know how to get to actual downtown Lexington proper from where I live without taking my life into my hands on my bicycle. So, all right, I'm going to get back to the question. But Randy, could you tell us about your thoughts on the clean energy investments we've seen and how you would approach clean energy and climate if elected?
Absolutely. We live in a global economy and global power production as well. China is ramping up production of its new coal power plants faster than we can decommission ours. So quite frankly, we're going to have to pivot. We're going to have to get our baseload power transferred off to renewables and to nuclear. We've got to make a bigger investment in nuclear than's been made in our country in decades. We have to make it now. And we have to get those plants up and running. We have room in Eastern Kentucky to do it. We have the water in Western Kentucky to do it, though the seismic considerations there are problematic. So it'd likely be in Eastern Kentucky, perhaps in the 6th district, that we could build a nuclear plant, but nationwide, we need to adopt that. In addition to that, we need to look at direct air capture. It's a nascent technology, but it's a technology that's proving benefit to removing carbon and methane out of the atmosphere. We need to make investments into that. We've got a lot of empty coal mines sitting in Eastern Kentucky that could be used for direct air capture and sequestration of carbon and methane. So we need to take a look at that. And then that's probably my minute right there.
Excellent. Thank you for your self-restraint. Jonathan, could you answer the question about clean energy and climate?
Muted.
Jonathan, you're muted. So that time is not going to count against you. But no one else try that trick. If you want to just give me some time to think. But no, Jonathan, go ahead and start over.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to say that for some of these questions, it's just they take a lot of thought, and to answer in 1 minute is pretty complicated sometimes. And if you look at the current session of Congress, they can debate for hours on a single subject. So I do apologize if it seems like I may have stumbled on the question, but I have been doing a lot of research on different things. I am informed in it. But as far as renewable energy and environmental stuff, of course, we need to invest in more renewable energies. The United States consumes far more oil than we produce, and we know that oil is a non-renewable resource. So obviously we need to look to the future, and we need to invest more in electric vehicles. I also like to eventually get to the point where we could have solar vehicles in this country. But we just need to realize that investing in renewable energy, investing in things outside of oil and non-renewable resources is critical to the success of this country. And we can't just rely on non-renewable sources of energy.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. Todd, same question.
Yeah, it's my understanding that 30% of the world's energy is now generated from renewables. So this tells us what's going on now, and also shows us what's possible. And one of the main reasons that we should invest widely and broadly in renewable energy, this will end the use of fossil fuels, and it will also end the U.S. military's kind of role as a protection racket for the petroleum industry, keeping shipping lanes open, and doing all manner of things that really detract from world peace. So any investment in renewables is a good idea, and we should acknowledge that climate change is real. It's coming. It's been affecting us for decades now.
Great. Thank you. And then just one thing to point out, and I fact checked Shauna earlier, so it is similar to Jonathan. He made a comment about the U.S. Consuming more oil than it produces. And actually right now under the Biden administration, it produces more oil than it consumes. And actually that's since I think actually under Obama that first started. So we're obviously still very much involved with the global oil market. It's a global commodity. The U.S. cannot set the price of oil because our oil is a lot more expensive than other places, OPEC nations, OPEC plus nations. But just again, I set a trend on this one, and I guess I need to see it through. But yeah, thanks all candidates for all those thoughtful answers about clean energy and climate. Chris.
All right. Our next question is about Israel, Palestine, and Ukraine. Ongoing aid has been in the news recently with the $95 billion foreign aid package brought by House Speaker Mike Johnson over objections of of much of his party. They include a measure that would force TikTok to cut ties with its Chinese parent company or face a nationwide ban. 8.1 billion in funding to the Indo-Pacific region to counter China, 60 billion in aid to Ukraine, and 17 billion in offensive and defensive weapons for Israel, paired with just over 9 billion in humanitarian aid for Gaza and elsewhere. Both Andy Barr and Kentucky's only Democrat in Congress, Louisville's Morgan McGarvey, largely agreed, with Andy Barr voting for every element and Representative McGarvey opposing only the border security element of the package. How would you have voted, and how would you view the ongoing conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine? And we will start with Todd.
Well, first of all, foreign policy issues, not black and white at all. And also should say from the start that criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitic, no more than criticizing Andy Barr is anti-Episcopalian. I think that as far as Ukraine goes, this is a very tough situation. I think it's horrifying that U.S. arms would be supplied to kill anyone. I also think it's a mistake to push NATO onto Ukraine. I don't think NATO nations should be on the border of Ukraine. I think this is a huge problem. I think it is a threat as bad as Putin is, which he obviously is. So this is a very hard thing to answer. As far as investment in China goes, I think Representative Barr is on a committee on strategic competition between the U.S. and Communist China, which discourages investment in China, especially in their defense industry. But it's curious to note that many of his donors are doing business in China. So I think we should get to the bottom of that.
Okay. Jonathan?
Could I get the question again?
Yes. There was a ongoing aid bill worth $95 billion, and that would force the sale of TikTok. It would provide 8.1 billion in funding to the Indo-Pacific region to counter China, 60 billion in aid to Ukraine, and 17 billion in offensive and defensive weapons for Israel, paired with just 9 billion in humanitarian aid for Gaza and elsewhere. How would you vote on this bill, and what are your views on the conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine?
So currently, as that bill stands, I would have not voted for it if I were in office. As far as Ukraine goes, I do support it. I do support us giving aid to Ukraine to support them against Russia. Russia is one of the strongest, I guess, countries against the United States. I don't want to say enemy because, I don't want to use that type of language, but obviously we know that protecting Ukraine protects American interests, especially based on the fact that Ukraine is surrounded by NATO allies, and we don't want Russian aggression to spread past Ukraine. But as far as Israel goes, we see on a daily basis the loss of innocent civilians in Gaza, and I wouldn't support sending more military aid to Israel. I do realize that Israel is one of the biggest financial donors to politicians in the United States. We have AIPAC. So Israel is sends us the most financial contributions from any foreign country. So the fact that innocent civilians are passing away from that conflict, I could not support that.
Okay.
But I do.
There. Thank you. Randy?
Well, first of all, the legislation was a raw deal, and it was a poison pill that was submitted by the Republicans to act as a power play. So let me just bifurcate it out into what it should have been, and I'll tell you how I would have voted on it. First, aid for Israel. As part of this package, without a guarantee that those funds would only be used for defensive weapons, i.e. the replenishment of the Iron Dome, I would have voted against it. Israel and specifically Benjamin Netanyahu have shown no restraint, no goodwill, and no decency in the behavior towards Gaza. Their fight against Hamas is valid, it's legitimate, and they can do it much more surgically than they have been doing without the extensive amount of civilian casualties. Ukraine, I would have absolutely voted for support for Ukraine 100%. The world as it is today will pale in comparison to what it would be like if Russia was able to tackle Ukraine and then move on to the Baltic countries and then Transnistria and move up into Eastern Europe, just like the old Warsaw Pact days. We cannot risk that. Taiwan, we should definitely invest in defensive weapons for them as well. And that is where I'll end it for my minute there.
Okay, thank you. Shauna?
I would have expeditiously voted no on this aid package. I want to point out the irony of offering a small fraction of humanitarian aid to one country while also continuing to send military aid and ammunitions to the country who is perpetuating the genocide against them. And, Todd's right. This is like foreign policy gets complicated, but America has played cowboys and sheriffs in the world for far too long. When we say a strategic ally, we mean a financial ally. We have two countries that are both, it appears, to be invading these sovereign nations, and we've chosen our favorite. In one case, we've sided with the aggressor, and in one case, we've sided with the oppressor. It's illogical. It doesn't make sense consistently. Humanitarian aid, diplomatic relations, this is no problem. I'm happy to provide humanitarian aid to Ukraine, to Palestine, to any nation that would need it within reason. But we are about to surpass $1 trillion in military spending in this year alone. It is too much. We need that money in our communities. We have people who are hungry here. We need to be done being the world police.
All right. Thank you all. Kimberly for the next question. You're muted, Kim.
I thought I just clicked it off. Okay, so what I'm saying at this particular time is that I'd like to do a couple of things first, if possible. First, I'd like to get your views on the 2020 elections and whether you think that Joseph Biden was honestly and fairly elected to the White House. And after that, hopefully that's a very short answer. That's a no or a yes answer. Do you think that Joe Biden was honestly and fairly elected to the White House? And then the other question would be, what do you think about the gravest threats to our nation's ongoing democratic experiment? And what would you do to address them if elected to serve in the 6th District in Washington, D.C.? I'm going to say Shauna.
So yes, I think Joe Biden was elected fairly. It seemed there was no evidence of election tampering. That this appears by every measure to be a fair and equal election, and Joe Biden rightfully was elected to the presidency. For the second part, as far as what is the greatest threat to democracy, I feel like it's the loss of constitutional rights. We are seeing this now with a lot of college students across the country who are protesting, who are unarmed, who are being met with violent military or police force. We have students who are in handcuffs, who are being tased for simply expressing their right to free speech, to peaceful assembly. We saw the IGO Boycott Act be reintroduced and passed earlier this year or late last year, which starts to dictate where Americans can and can't spend their money. I mean, and then we talked earlier about abortion access being taken away. We are seeing constitutional rights one by one be removed from people. It's very scary. It's the largest threat to our democracy. We have representatives who aren't representing their districts and who are only representing the views of their biggest corporate donors.
Randy?
I would agree largely. It's the atrophying of the Constitution and its impact on our lives. We are seeing a politicization, if I could get that word out tonight, I'd be doing great, of the judicial system, which has been unseen like this in 50, 60 years since the McCarthy days. What we need right now to fix it first and foremost is immediate legislation to expand the Supreme Court to represent one Supreme Court justice for each federal circuit, so 13 justices total. That needs to be done right away. Now, That's going to largely depend on who wins the presidency next time and who wins the House and the Senate as to whether that moves forward. But it's certainly one piece of legislation that would make a lot of good right up front. Second would be to properly fund the judiciary. We are short so much funding for so many justices that there is such a backlog of cases that justice can't be found because people are waiting years and years in criminal and civil cases for justice to be served. We have to get the politics out of the justice game, and we've certainly got to get the politics out of the legislation game and get back into some humanity, for crying out loud.
Todd?
Yes, of course, Biden won. There were 60 plus cases, all of which Trump lost. It's ridiculous. I know you had to ask the question, but it's kind of insulting that we're asking this question after so long. We ought to make it easier to vote. We ought to make it easier to vote. This is just a continuation. The harder it is to vote, it just means a continuation of minority rule. We need ranked choice voting. We need to enforce civil rights and voting acts, something the Supreme Court has eroded. And that's about all I have to say about that.
Jonathan?
Thank you. So I'm paying attention. It's just like, since I'm the last one, could I get the question one more time?
Yes. Number one, do you think that Joe Biden was elected as president in honestly, fairly? What was the words I used? Honestly and fairly. And the second part of this would be, what do you think are the gravest threats to our nation's ongoing democratic experiment? And basically, what would you do to address those items?
Thank you. So, yes, I believe that Joe Biden won the election. And as far as the greatest threat, or one of the greatest threats to our democracy, I think it's just the fact that we were founded on unity. This is the United States of America, but at times it feels like it's the divided States of America, and we have a lot of polarization. And so we need to come together as a country. And I know that we have different parties and we have different views, and this is a melting pot. So we are a nation of many people, many different religions, different backgrounds, but we need to come together more as a country. So I think that the biggest threat to our democracy is the lack of unity that we're seeing. And we know that a house divided amongst itself cannot stand. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thanks, Kimberly, for the question. All right. So this is our final question of the evening, and it goes to electability. So what sets you apart from the other candidates seeking the nomination? Why should voters select you to run against Andy Barr, currently sitting on at least $3 million cash on hand? Due to his leadership role on the powerful House Banking Committee, he will not need to worry about his campaign funding. This is your kind of wrap-up answer, so feel free to take 2 minutes to answer the question, why voters should select you to run against Andy Barr. And we will start with Jonathan.
So again, thank you for all of the other candidates for running. Thank you for the listeners for taking time to listen to us. And thank you for the panelists for asking us these questions. And so, as the panelists just mentioned, Andy Barr does have a lot of money and he doesn't have to worry about the finances. But I think the American people are tired of career politicians. They're tired of everything seeming like it depends on how much money a person has. We are a country with more middle-class people than rich. And we see that the top 1% have a lot of influence in politics. They have a lot of influence in pretty much every aspect of life in this country. But this is a democracy, and we need people elected to office that are more representative of the general population. We need fresh faces in Washington. We need people that haven't been tainted by the big lobbyists and the big donors. We need people to be able to have things in common with the population of this country. We need people that have proven to be able to make a difference in their community. I've been able to make a difference with limited financial resources, with unity in the community. So it only makes sense that a person with limited resources, once they have a bigger platform, such as the United States House of Representatives, to make a bigger impact. And I just believe that everyone can achieve greatness. And this country was founded on people that had dreams. And also, I believe, just like we all know, that this country promises life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I encourage everyone to pursue what makes them happy. And I'm a person that believes in fighting for what you believe in. And we need to have more leadership that will give a voice to those that feel voiceless and fight for those that don't have equal representation. And
Thank you so much, Jonathan. All right. And the next answer on what sets you apart and why should voters support your run against Andy Barr, Todd.
Well, I'm able to draw some the necessary, very sharp contrast between Andy Barr's priorities and those of 6th District voters. Representative Barr has some conflicts that he should, acknowledge, and he should rectify. He should address them. And chief among those are women's reproductive rights. Again, this is a continuation of a social hierarchy that need not exist in the U.S. The other are his deep ties, like Aaron said, to the financial sector. He seems to be very enthusiastic, very dedicated to bank profits. By the way, loaning money at interest is really not a very hard thing to do. And I didn't realize that the financial sector needed so much representation in Congress. He seems particularly passionate about credit card late fees. I think payday lending is also one of his passions. This affects 6th District voters a great deal, especially if they're living paycheck to paycheck. If they're using a credit card to pay their monthly bills, they're paying high interest rates, and they can never get out of this cycle. So these are two of the contrasts that Representative Barr needs to answer for, and I think I'm the guy to do it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Todd. Shauna, same question.
Thank you. I respect and admire everyone on this panel. I know that we would be, Kentucky and America would be in better hands with anyone here tonight than with Andy Barr. I would be happy to support anyone who came out of the primaries as a winner. I think, again, we would all do a much better job than Andy Barr. But I do think there are some things specifically that would put me uniquely in a position to win against Andy Barr. One of that is funding. Whoever is going to unseat Andy Barr needs millions of dollars. And we have done a really good job fundraising so far. We've kind of taken when I say we, I mean me and my campaign team. We've kind of taken a page from Amy McGrath's book where we run locally, but we fundraise nationally. And I believe the majority of my donations from the first FEC quarter came from actually outside of the district. I have donations from people in California, people in New York, who really do want to see someone in Congress who, kind of like Jonathan said, is a little bit, doesn't look like the standard person in Congress. People generally want someone who is a woman, someone who is younger, who is a non-career politician. I'm a strong term limit supporter. I am not, it is no secret, I'm not in this to be a career politician. I'm going to serve my time and then I'm going to go back to being a social worker. And people do sense my authenticity and they tend to trust me. And fundraising has been one of our biggest strengths here. Also, I hope I'm not close to my 2 minutes. I'll be quick. A lot of the red communities where Andy Barr typically wins, these are communities that my family lives in. I grew up in Breathitt County. It's kind of getting into Hal Rogers' district. But these are communities that I've worked in, my family lives in. I really understand and know these communities. And I think that there's just a couple factors that uniquely put me in a position to unseat Andy Barr. But again, I would be happy to support anyone on the panel who came out of the primaries.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shauna. And then our final answer on this is Randy.
Well, thanks, Aaron. And I want to echo what Shauna said. I think we'd be well served by anyone on this panel. But the reason I think I would be uniquely qualified is that I understand and recognize the fierce urgency of now. I've got young daughters and a young son, and I have skin in the game. I have the unique opportunity to make choices that I might not live to see the results of, that are going to impact their lives in tremendous ways going forward, and the lives of my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. These are profound and existential decisions that we're going to make. We've got to tackle climate change. We've got to tackle income inequality. We've got to tackle reproductive freedom, and we've got to do it now. The earth is on fire in so many different areas, literally and figuratively, and those have to be tackled right away. Washington's set up to breed stagnation. That's what Andy Barr thrives in. And what we have to do to beat Andy Barr is to attack him with new ideas, fresh ideas, and direct action that can be taken on day one when we go to Congress. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have legislation set up and ready to go to work in a divided Congress, a united Democratic Congress, and either presidency that we're working with, because the threat is real to our nation and to our world, and we need to tackle it immediately.
Thank you, Randy. And thank you to all the candidates. I think we were really well served by
May I
all
say
of
something, please? Can I say something, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to dispute what Shauna just said. I've taken a look at her FEC filing. She did raise $50,000. Almost all of it was in-kind donations. Almost none of it was in dollars. So I would say that Shauna maybe is. I haven't seen Jonathan's or I've seen Randy's. I would say that Shauna, you're a very poor fundraiser. In-kind donations do not count, and I would dispute what you have to say. And I think you should answer what I just said.
Yes. Can I respond, please?
Please.
Yeah, we're all sorts of off the map at this point. So yes, Shauna, please respond to Todd's direct query about your fundraising.
By the way, I have the spreadsheet on my computer, and I know it well.
Todd, I mean, a lot of my support has came from outside of the district, and right now we have a team of I have around 40 or 50 volunteers, and a lot of those volunteers contributed their in-kind donations through my campaign.
Yeah, that's not fundraising, and you know it.
It is fun. I mean, it is fundraising. These people help me with policy. This is a part of fundraising, and a lot of it was to meet the KET deadline. But it is still.
Did anyone meet just to be clear, did anyone meet the KET threshold to be involved and to be on TV for KET?
I believe that I did with the use of in-kind donations.
I wanted to say something about the KET thing, though. They're basically violating everyone's rights, because with when you're running a campaign, they can't just say you have to raise so many dollars before you're on TV.
I mean, they can, right? They can. They absolutely are within their own power to do that. And that is it fair? I don't know, but no, I do know that it costs money to run.
They're violating the FCC. There's an actual FCC code they're violating. It's called equal time.
I would have one more thing to say. In-kind donations are not dollars. That is not fundraising. This is a technicality that you're claiming you have. And so we'll just have to agree to disagree.
I appreciate the clarification. I do think that money matters. Money is not the only determinator who can win a race. We all saw that Amy McGrath had more money than God and did not win that race, right? So what I'm really interested to hear the ideas that have been shared here. I appreciate everyone's time and energy. I appreciate you throwing your hat in the ring to challenge Andy Barr. And so good luck to you all on the campaign trail. If anyone was intrigued by any of the ideas here and thought that, wanted some follow-up, and I don't fault you if you wanted more follow-up on some of these ideas. If you want to ask questions directly on things that we've neglected to focus on, you actually have a chance in Lexington this Friday, May 3rd. Our friends with the Bluegrass Activist Alliance are organizing a Meet the Candidates event. That's from 5 to 7 at the downtown Central Lexington Public Library. They're going to be in the Farish Theater. So go ahead and come down Friday, 5 o'clock, meet these folks and some other local candidates as well. We're going to be back next week in our usual format. Again, thank you so much to these candidates for joining us and taking time out of their busy schedules tonight. Next week, we'll be joined by Tom Loftus to discuss the political donors behind Amendment 2, the effort to allow tax dollars to fund private schools. Tom spent 32 years as the Frankfurt bureau chief for the Courier Journal. He's a member of the Kentucky Journalism Hall of Fame, now a freelance reporter with the Kentucky Lantern. Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and organized as a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Indivisible Project, the Commonwealth Alliance for Voter Engagement, or CAVE, and are also proud members of the Forward Kentucky Network. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. Production of episode 160, our first ever candidate forum, was by the multi-talented Nate Orshan. Big thanks to Nate, who wrote and performed our theme songs. You can find more information and music at natosongs.com. Check him out if you want to tap your toe. If you miss our weekly live stream on Facebook or YouTube, audio podcasts and our show notes are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you do listen to the pod, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening right now. Logo and some graphic content provided by Couchfire Media. More information can be found at couchfiremedia.com. Nate, let us listen to this song.